everything is a threesome, like,
Right.
and so there's a third force, which is like what keeps those two polarities coming together and coming apart again.
One way to say it is polarities, and then the relationship is the third force.
Yes.
There is a type that there is an alchemy that something about that relationship is not only attractive, but it's also really challenging, and it's going to be transformative.
All of you people are cosmic latte.
We're adding some new insults to the BHE vocabulary.
The big hormone Enneagram.
Hi, I'm John Lukovich, sexual self-pres, golden 5-wing, 458 trifix.
Hi, I'm David Gray, self-pres, sexual, 9 with 1, 974 trifix.
What up, it's Emeka. I'm an 8-wing 7, sexual self-pres with 854 fixes.
Hi, I'm Nancy. I am a self-pres social 3, wing 4, with a 369 trifix. If you like our podcast, guys, make sure you go like and subscribe on the Apple Podcast app. And if you really like us, you should definitely leave us a review.
All right, welcome to Big Hormone Enneagram. It is your Enneagram himbos today, minus Nancy, and we don't know what we talked about today. We're talking today about the law of 3 in relationships and in types.
We talked about nines.
Specifically nines in the bottom of the Enneagram. It's just 9 representing the yes, and the gap between 4 and 5 is representing the no, and the relationship between them is 3 forces and how that plays in relationships and basically everything. So before we get into it, we got some plugs, of course. We got Please Buy My Book, The Instinctual Drives the Enneagram, on Bookshop and Amazon. Please leave reviews.
How's the sales on that going, by the way?
They're pretty good. I mean, it's pretty just like consistent, which is, great. Like, it's not dipping off or anything. Yeah, I mean, every day I sell between like 5 and 12 books.
That's great.
Damn, every day.
So, yeah.
That's pretty good.
Yeah, it feels pretty good. It feels like people are reading, and more people are always saying, they've read it or it was recommended to them. And I spoke to a group the other day for New Ventures West that was like doing it as part of their training thing or something. And
oh wow, that's good.
Yeah, it's been cool. So we got that. We got David's Trifix book, book audio guide or visual guide. Sorry, on Enneagrammer.com and Anysight.com. It's not just good for just learning Trifix, but like to getting each flavor of each type in an aesthetic way, in a non-verbal way. That's pretty hard for people to like land on with description of what these things are. And David's book is really good, just illustrating it. And then we got, please send us money.
Yeah. Send us money for the audio equipment. So far, y'all have sent in $190. We're trying to raise $500. If you're appreciating the improvements in the sound quality of our voices, help us pay for this equipment that we're buying. And also, this is going towards getting equipment so that we can do a live podcast, a video podcast when we do meet up. So, we're trying to get professional up here. So just Venmo us some money at EMEKV or PayPal us money at bhepodcast@gmail.com. You can also donate at Enneagrammer.com. Just leave a note. That is for the BHE audio equipment. Help out your boys and girl.
Help us out.
Dark Arts Academy.
Oh, yeah.
Dark Arts Academy on our, you can sign up at our website, Enneagrammer.com. We just released a typing class video we did on Nina Simone. And I think this week it's going to be Gary V. Or maybe by the time this airs, it's going to be somebody else. But we roasted the hell out of Gary V. And Nina Simone turned out to be really cool. I didn't know very much about her, but she turned out to be a social 8.
Social self-pres 8 with 2 and 6 fixes.
Yeah. But cool. Tune in to find out what we think of Gary V. That was a fun class video.
Who's Gary V?
Gary Vaynerchuk, that fucking Cookie Monster looking guy that's on all social media telling people to hustle harder and keep posting videos.
I don't know. I'll check it out. I don't know.
Yeah, he's repulsive.
That's kind of why we did him, because he's repulsive, so we could be bitchy and catty.
But also we did him because he is somebody we're trying to type people that the OPS people have typed so that we can eventually do like a cross video typing thing. And so he's one of their kind of touchstone people that they've learned from in terms of, I mean, if you're trying to like promote yourself on social media, he was one of the first people to take advantage of social media as a business tool. And so, yeah, you can learn from the guy, but like he's really just repulsive on so many levels.
All right. But yeah, last night Alexander and I did mushrooms. I'm a little fried but I discovered all the secrets of the universe, and it was all very clear. So like when you're talking about Pete Davidson and the way that like the feminine and the masculine like try to get acknowledgement from one another,
Yeah,
in the different ways, like there's all these ways it became clear of, I don't know, it's so much to talk about, but yeah, like there's some sort of precise relationship between the masculine and the feminine, and then the force that keeps them separate and together. It was like the law of three was like so fucking strong, but I was like just seeing it through the ways that men and women like try to relate to each other, and there's like the weird like daddy stuff and the weird MILF cougar stuff, and like
Yeah.
like one of the things that came to me was like there's all this like MILF porn of like these like big like thickish big tit women on these like tiny boys,
boy man.
Yeah, and it's like, what is going, like that's so, like that kind of thing, or like there's some that are like old men with young girls, this kind of stuff. And it's like, what is going on? And it's just all these different ways that like two polarities are like trying to meet each other and like experience different levels of each other. And I don't know, it was really clear. And I saw like the Enneagram, like the Ennead of Heliopolis that it comes from is like the map of reality. It was like so fucking clear. It was very crazy. But yeah, anyway, I don't know what Pete Davidson made me think.
Pete Davidson's like, he's got an odd face. He's bordering on ugly.
Yeah, right.
I don't necessarily think he's a tall guy, so there's that. But it's not like he's some like Brad Pitt, like unanimously, universally handsome looking person that you wouldn't be surprised if everybody wants to fuck. But I mean, he's fucked a lot of like top Hollywood women, or dated top Hollywood women, and there's something there. Like he has some kind of likability magic, and it's like, why does Pete Davidson get all these girls? And understanding like every type has its own sort of seduction strategies that are innate to every type, and it seems like 6 is sort of that attachment magic. They just get you to buy into their trashiness, their hot messness. They make you feel confident.
That's really interesting, actually. Yeah.
Yeah, there's the whole thing too of women not caring as much about looks, which is strange to guys,
Right. Yeah. That's an aspect of things that's interesting to look at is certain guys. Like OD's a good looking guy, but I realized why he was so sticky, like why people were obsessed with him, is because he was just like going overboard with this like self-deprecating, making her feel good, but then also just being very distant when he's not with her. So it's like this push-pull of just like super relatable, likable person that you want to make your husband, who is completely unavailable to that, but gives you the goods more so than anyone you've ever met. So it's like this, it's impossible to quit because you can't hate the guy.
Yeah. Giving it to you and not giving it to you at the same time. Like
That's part of what I'm doing too.
Whereas like they don't stick around with me because they don't actually, there's nothing about the way I come across that seems that there's any chance that they're going to get that, even though I'm more likely to actually, if I do commit, like I'm all the way in. It's like it's much more difficulty on the front end with me versus OD is completely open to anybody, but it's like trying to pin him down is like impossible.
Yeah, that's like the attachment thing is like there's a certain like what did you just called it, like available on the front end, but then you can't actually that's so attachment
hardcore.
Yeah, like I'm not available on the front end, but I think some people have figured out is like if I can get that guy to like me, then I really have something. So some people, it motivates some people to like try to get in with me just because I'm not an easy person to get to. But if you are my type of person, it's like I'm, ride or die with those people. But it's good luck. Good luck becoming one of those people.
Yeah. There's something last night with like Alexandra and I, like sometimes we like both know how dedicated we are to each other, but we both get like freaked out in our various ways.
Mm-hmm.
And there was a thing where it was like, I could tell in her 9 space, she like, she's a receptive force. Like she wants somebody to come get her.
Mm-hmm.
And, but she also wants to throw up, I mean, I think this is pretty universal, but throw up obstacles to like, come get me, like sometimes she's really coherent in there and like a solid object, so to speak, for me to get. And then sometimes she's a cloud. And, and like part of it last night was like I said to her, I was like, I'm with you. Okay, like stop doing this. I got it. Like I've been you've set up the hurdles, and I keep coming. Like
right.
There was that thing, and there's something there about like I've every image in my mind at once, so it's not really distilling into words, but it's all like.
So is it you're more getting at this sort of like attachment thing where attachment types are available up front, but there's still kind of like an unreachable quality that they always maintain on some level?
Yeah, like I feel like I think as you spoke to him, like I'm not available up front.
Mm-hmm.
But then I'm real available. Not to say that there's like no problems or things or whatever, but I'm saying no to everything until I say yes. Whereas like I think attachment says yes to everything until they find no.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
The attachment wants to like keep saying yes, but saying yes to things is itself a kind of a hidden no.
Mm-hmm.
It's not saying no. It's a saying no to saying no. Whereas the hexad thing is like no, but not really landing on your yes in a certain way. Does that make sense?
Yeah. I think one way that this is showing up, at least recently, is just seeing just how much attachment types are playing this game of saying yes that they don't really mean, especially with the typing process. Like at this point, shit has crystallized. Like everyone, people who are coming to the group have been listening to the podcast. They know the deal, but still, we still have some attachment types who are like saying yes to, I'm open to learning. I'm open to this possibility that I'm not the type that I think I am, but they're still doing yes, but no, in this sort of like still trying to find a loophole to make themselves the type that they thought they were. Like it's interesting how the yes for attachment types is actually, it's just a veiled no or a delayed no. I mean, I've talked about this before, but it's just interesting that every single time I keep seeing it keeps just say no, just disagree and move on. Why are we doing this charade where you're acting like you're open when I know and everybody knows that you're not actually open to what's being presented here? Like you're just taking a long goodbye. It's like just say you don't agree with the typing and just go type however the fuck you want to type,
For me, there's definitely people that I'm just don't even want to talk to at all, and I make that pretty clear. but there's plenty of people that I think it's with attachment, you're kind of just wanting some sense of general acceptance sort of in your field, you know what I mean?
Mm.
Yeah, and so it's sometimes it's that, and you're trying to weave around in all of that.
Acceptance in your field, like something about that, makes sense because, like, all right, so in like the not a 4 thing, for example, someone will like identify as a 4, and it is a kind of, I think, a way of accepting parts of themselves they haven't been able to accept. So that 4 identification, or 8 or whatever it might be, gives them an acceptance of something that they couldn't accept at 4. So it's like this win, right? It's like accepting on a new level. And so then when there's pushback of actually you might not be this type or that type, it's like a wound because they achieved a certain level of acceptance they're seeking, but instead of being like acceptance and it's all like green lights or something like that, you're getting a pushback for acceptance. You know what I'm saying? Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's like I can understand, I guess, some of the violation because it feels like the field of acceptance is
being violated.
And David, like I was listening to our motivation not behavior, whatever thing from last time, and God, you said something. Oh, it's like, David, you're saying about 4 and about 4 as being a big no. And you were like, and it makes sense that in the cosmic order of things that there is a no,
Yeah.
and it does. And if I'm thinking of like 9 as like representing the top of the Enneagram, and the gap between 4 and 5 represent like the negation or the no, it's like the 9 at the top is like this eye that wants to see and accept everything.
Yeah.
And at the bottom is this negation of everything. That's like, no, not it.
Yep.
And so the task of like the top of the Enneagram is to like accept no as a thing. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Like part of the field of acceptance is accepting there's a no in the you know what I mean?
Right. Yeah, it's almost like the work for 9s and this is something that shows up in typing is a 9, maybe even 9 and 6. Well, I guess all the attachment types will get pinned down to a certain location, but more so for 9, pinned down to a certain location as in a typing, and the response, if they disagree with the typing and are struggling with seeing themselves, is that there are all these different reasons why what you saw isn't the real me, or there's a second video, or there's a different collage, or this condition that I have, or my gender. Like there's all these different.
And if you accepted, if you saw that, you'd accept it then.
Right. Like, but the issue, the issue is that yes, I saw the full range of you, all these different videos, and you were the same person across all those videos. You didn't change.
Yep.
And so I don't know if we'd mentioned this before, but like the top of the crown of the Enneagram representing the full spectrum of light, like the rainbow, and almost like that experiment where you get the full spectrum of light and you put it through a prism, and through the other side you get the light, or is it the other way where you get pure light and it goes through a prism and it goes into the full spectrum of light? And so 9 representing the full spectrum, and 4 or 5 representing that pure piercing white black contrast, where you can see clearly that there are clear lines between and distinctions between everything, whereas the full spectrum is seeing how everything you could be everything. And so that's kind of what I see for the work for 9s, is to see that there are, at least with the Enneagram, is to see that there are clear lines between these types, and they are extremely limited. And it doesn't matter, how many videos or how many collages, you are a distinct entity that can be defined and put into a box.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I don't know. There's something there about the no and the yes, and like one of the things I was in a argument with somebody online for fun, and they were pretty clear to me like a 9, but they're very heady, and so people like they took themselves to be a 5, and I wasn't not arguing even about type. It was about the validity of introjection as the forced defense mechanism, and I was like, it doesn't make any sense, and it goes completely against what 4 is. And this guy was almost definitely 9, and it was like this really interesting thing where he couldn't just say, this is how introjection works in 4. I mean, it doesn't, but then he couldn't just like lay it out, and he had to kind of connect everything to everything else. Like he went into Gurdjieff, he went into metaphysics. It was like this entirely long, meandering thing, and I was like, just say no, like
Right.
because it's like he sort of accepted the premise of Naranjo.
Yeah.
And he was trying to say that even my rejection of Naranjo's introjection idea was itself some kind of weird backdoor form of introjection. It made no sense.
Oh, wow. Okay.
But it was like, I always joke about 9 being like Neo from the Matrix, and like, like part of the strength of the 9 energy and the weakness of the 9 energy is both like when Neo avoids bullets and he just like contorts his body to avoid stuff. It's like 9s can avoid the bullets and like keep having that endurance, or they can just like, like fuck 4 being the creative type. Like 9 is so creative, and they could just like connect everything to make something work, and like to keep the attachment or whatever, to keep the connection, keep the acceptance. And yeah, it was just what I was noticing. I was like, all right, this guy probably is a 9. He thinks he's a 5, but and I was like, what is hitting me? Like, what's the thing that I'm seeing that is making me think 9? And there was an absence of no in his thinking. Like,
Mhm.
Yep.
there, like the 5's thinking style is like negation. You know,
Yep.
it's like ripping something apart and seeing what is not known about it. Like, what's in the like, it's just rejecting everything basically to get
Yeah.
to something.
Narrowing. Yeah.
Stripping it down.
Yeah, it reminds me just thinking about like Facebook Enneagram and arguing with people. And there was a point where I made the decision that I would stop arguing with 9s about their self-typing. Like it didn't matter how clear of a distinction that was made. I mean, because I getting better over the years at observing the way people interact and the way type perspectives play out. And so I have practiced and gotten really good at catching people in the act of doing their type and really blowing up these sort of type perspectives. And so what I've noticed, it didn't matter how good the observations were and how much of a bullseye it was in terms of explaining where someone was coming from, that if a 9 had dug themselves into a certain perspective or a certain typing or whatever it was, that there's nothing you could do or say, regardless of how accurate or how distinct it was, that would ever convince or get a 9 to see different at that point in time. Like it's literally going to take their coming around to it maybe months, years later. At that point in time, your points are useless. And so I made a personal decision that you could just go endless with, just it doesn't matter how good of a distinction you make or argument that you make. Even if someone made a video and there was like, we're doing video commentary, like here is where you did this and this, they're going to come back with, well, we haven't thought about cognitive type because INFP, blah, 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 or whatever. It's like, where are we even talking about that right now? We're talking about the Enneagram. Or you haven't talked about like my gender or like the political landscape from where I came, all that kind of shit where I'm like, there's always going to be a deflection. And it reminds me of that confusion technique. I don't know if we've talked about that here, but something we should bring back up. I think it's one of the best descriptions that anyone's ever come up with. Shout out to Tom Condon.
Yeah.
Confusion technique for 9, because it just sums it up, sort of like how 9s can start off in one point and then deflect and keep on deflecting. And what it does is that you just get exhausted. And one thing he said in the article is that you end up feeling just like the 9 feels all the time, which is exhausted and apathetic.
Right, because the road is so meandering partly, right? So they're going to stick it out, and that's part of how they're using rage is to just that they can just keep going down that road. It's just steady fuel for meandering.
I think somebody had asked a question about what is the 9 thinking style, and to really get into, how do 9s confuse themselves, confuse others? Because it shows up in multiple different ways. There are a lot of heady 9s, like really intellectual 9s, and like what is the 9 thinking style, and how does that get in the way of a 9 seeing themselves?
Yeah, I mean, I want to say too, like it might sound like we're just shitting on 9s, which we are.
It's okay. David's a 9. It's fine.
Yeah, it's okay. Yeah, David loves it. No, but like I mean, I'm in love with a 9, like, and as a 4, 5, 8 or whatever, like I experience myself as very un-9ish, like very strongly in contrast to 9 energy, especially like being with a Bermuda 9, and how much I value like that perspective energy, because it really kind of feels like that 9 energy is really like the thing that stubbornness and that sticking through things and that rage is like planting a flag in something real, and it's like a 9 needs to just like figure out what to let go of and what to accept. It's like they've just got it mixed up a little bit. Like they've got the right tools, like the acceptance and the intelligence and the creativity and the sensitivity, but it's like, they'll sort of prematurely freeze an image of what to accept, like based on early life or something, like to keep the attachment structure going. And it's like if they can learn to just like realize that they're planting the flag in the ground kind of thing in that substantial real thing is really real and important, but it's like they're usually fixing it in the wrong place. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
And like, I mean, as whatever 4, 5, blah blah blah, like there is a lot, like especially given the personality style I've got, like there's a lot of like focus on self and my individualism, my individuation, and that's the most important thing. And like that is for my type. Like that's just how it feels. But I recognize more and more that it's like it's more like I don't know how to put this, but like as a contrasting force to what 9 represents. You know what I mean? I think what we're talking about is more like the top of the Enneagram versus the bottom.
Yeah.
It's kind of like I really do see like the 9, the top, the 9 energy as being like the sun, and then like the bottom of the Enneagram being like the space around the sun. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's like 9's got it. Like I mean, so many fucking the most brilliant fucking people in the world, the most interesting, I mean, like, how do you have a type that has people like Jung and Einstein, but then like some of the hottest people in the world are also, you know what I mean?
Right.
Like how do you have that all in one type?
Right. You can get the full spectrum of, humanity, sexy to extremely intelligent, extremely creative, leadership, all of it is in 9. I think, David, you talked about something, the metaphor of 9 representing the sun and how that lights up everything. But when the sun's at the high noon, you can see more things, but it also blinds you in a certain way.
I think the metaphor I was using is, the sun at high noon. So you imagine the sun straight above the 9, right? And so what that means is that the shadow of the 9 is right under their feet. And contrast is what has you see personality and differentiation. So the bigger the contrast, it's why like 2 and 7 in that sort of sundial modality, 3 and 6 are like straight across sun. So they are kind of, I don't know, splitting the day and night, let's say.
Yeah.
Right. But so the next ones up from there are 2 and 7. And that's why 2 and 7 are such big personalities, because there's this long shadow. You see what I'm saying? And that creates contrast. And so you see personality. That's just staying in really abstract space. I mean, that is part of the maybe unconscious appeal for 9s of, sticking to being a 4 or a 5. It's partly that acceptance thing too, in the sense that part of what 9s are doing, I've said it before, like 4 and 5 represent a no. And you've got a chip on your shoulder as an attachment type about the fact that you do adapt. And just in general for human beings, sort of an ego ideal would be to kind of essentially not need anybody and not need acceptance, right? That would be the ideal cool person or something, right? So, when you're a 9 and you're claiming 4 or 5 for yourself, you're claiming some of the no and some of the negative and some of the dark and so forth. And so that's why 9s grip onto it so tightly, is that, I accepted these so-called negative traits, negative relative to, what society wants me to be as a positive, productive person or something like that. And so I'm not going to let go, because again, it's like, it's trying to do autonomy for one thing, in a way.
Yeah. When in the experience Alexander and I shared last night, like I just had this extremely clear expression of the law of 3 as like every second is the 3 forces, the active, the negative, and the reconciling force trying to come into relationship. And that each of these forces is kind of like, you'd say, unstable in the sense that you can't freeze it, and in some ways that we're all just trying to freeze these forces. And what I mean by that is, like, in the case of 9, it's like I'm trying to affirm acceptance. Like I'm trying to, like accepting is like the meeting of the active force and the negative force. It's like the active force and the receptive force. Like it's the unification. Like I'm trying to unify things.
Yin yang.
Yeah, yin yang, but everything is a threesome, like,
Right.
and so there's a third force, which is like what keeps those two polarities coming together and coming apart again. It's like everything is an inhale and an exhale, and it's sort of like of recognizing that you can have the acceptance, but you also have to accept non-acceptance in like a real way, not just some kind of abstract way. It's like at all times there is the juicy pleasure, acceptance, milk, whatever. But then there's also like time. There's also like decay. There's also no. There's also taking it away. And it really, I mean, I'm sounding like a 9 right now, but it's like, it really is just like the waves moving in and out. Like it was so clear.
Don't you have a thing in your book about like the high side of 9 would be that sort of acceptance of the no? It'd be, I can't remember if it's in the section about 9 and harmony or something like that.
I don't even remember what's in my book. Let me check.
But yeah, it was something along the lines of, the high side of 9 being not needing to change negatives or sharp truth or, you know what I mean, or darkness into light, but actually being with what is, because that's a big part of the 9 thing, is that you're really radically filtering what's even coming in. And that's why 9s are constantly kind of slowing down everything. It's because you're trying to filter everything before it comes in. I mean, this is, of course, totally unconscious, but you know what I mean? That's part of that whole slowing down time and goes into even 9s ghosting people, because you're trying to prepare. You're trying to prepare for reality constantly,
Right.
instead of just having it come moment to moment, which would be part of what the deeper connection to that gut body rage would be, is that you can roll with the punches.
It reminds me of this concept that Tom Connon had included in his article about, in this confusion technique article called Virtual Life Obsessions. And he talked about virtual life obsessions being like these dissociated obsessions that 9s create instead of actually confronting real life. So, for example, you could look at typology as a virtual life obsession, where it's kind of like, you can just go around the wheel trying on different types every year. You don't actually confront the reality of doing something with this information. And so a lot of 9s can escape or have these dissociated obsessions that prevent them or delay sort of like actually confronting real life. And I've had lots of conversations with 9s, like asking, like, what do I fucking do as a 9? How do I fucking grow as a 9? And the answer is coming back to the tapping into that rage of the gut center, like in the moment rage of, a line has been crossed, and how to practice doing something with that rage. And for some people, for some 9s, they've gotten comfortable or they've adapted to being comfortable with being aggressive online. And maybe that's an arena where they're comfortable doing so. I've also noticed that some
and that's
9s
virtual
culturally,
space, by the way, right?
yeah, virtual space, which is also,
right.
but I've also noticed that there's a big cultural piece to this. Like for some 9s culturally, their culture is highly confrontational. And, those 9s come across online far more confrontational than would be expected for 9s. And so it seems like there's a wide range for what a 9 could be comfortable doing. And so some 9s are very conflict oriented because that's just maybe the way they grew up, or maybe there's something that they've gotten comfortable with. And so, practicing setting boundaries with anger, because it seems like something a 9 could adapt to. And maybe they've just adapted to being extremely conflict avoidant, and that 9 would fit the stereotype of peacemaker. But for some 9s, it's the opposite. And so it seems like, they can tap into that ability to adapt and become more comfortable, stepping into setting those kind of boundaries.
Well, I think what you both have spoken to with the rage and anger and resistance, it's like 9s are already saying no to so much, but they're just unconscious about their no. There's like a a fear of the implications of owning all the no's that are already being just thrown all the fuck over the place. Like if there wasn't a no, there wouldn't be a resistance to like getting out of bed. Like
Yeah, you're right. Right.
like it's they're just so identified and comfortable with the acceptance yes, and it's like at the cost of burying their no, which then leads to all this like fuck, like that's the no wants to burst out and to say like if the no bursts out, then it's like I can forge myself like a like molten metal into like a fucking sword, like some kind of like the cold and the focus and the no presents makes the sword. And I think that, at least speaking for Emic and I's trifix, which is like very non-attachment-y, like I think we're unconscious in a sense to our yeses, like
That's interesting.
and it's hard for me to articulate because I'm in it, but just seeing no to everything all the time has I'm like,
Well, I'll say it this way. I'll say that I think what you're getting at for me is that no is such a baseline that I'm not aware that there are these tight little channels that my yeses can come through. And I'm always kind of surprised when I realize that I said yes to something looking back. I was like, wait, how did this? Oh, yeah, because they did this, this, and this, or they connected with me on this one little thing that I cared about, that was a gateway for me to say yes. And I'm realizing that my yeses could be manipulated if someone actually knew the little tight little buttons that they needed to hit to get past. And my yeses seemed much more vulnerable to me. And when I actually look back on them, it's like, oh, wait, that's all it took. For me to,
and so that makes you armor up more with more no.
Yep.
Well, it's well, part of it's that, but I also recognize that there are certain things that because it's just very few things that I really give a shit about, and if you somehow unintentionally overlap with the things that I care about, then I all of a sudden take you seriously, and I'm recognizing that. It's not that I can double down and say, hey, I'm not going to respond to that, because the reason I respond to it is because it is important to me. But
it's like we want to say yes actually really, really badly, but there's almost no opportunity to say yes.
They're
mad about how few things are to affirm.
Right.
Yes. So when something comes around that it hits on our little yes arena, it's like, yes, I want to say yes to that person. And in looking back, it's like maybe I said yes prematurely because my yes are so few and far between. That it's like you want to give people that chance because it's just a rare thing that you come across someone who does hit something that you want to say yes to. But sometimes I realize like shit, like I'm so eager to say yes because it's so rare that I look back and I was like, maybe I shouldn't have. I should have.
Because you feel like exploited and taken advantage of and contaminated, and like you've sullied something that you've been like, I've been keeping everything at bay from touching this thing.
Right.
And then something does, like you're like, oh, finally something can touch it, and then it was like not the thing.
Right.
And it feels like it's just everything's been fucking ruined in a certain way. Like, I mean, that is something that for like my, like my past relationship and stuff like that, it was a yes because I was over eager to say yes when I'd said no so many times to things. You know what I'm saying? And then I felt like, oh, this was not the thing I should have said yes to. And I keep going back through my life and reviewing, and like, I think that there are small yeses I should have made that I was like holding out for like a big yes.
Yes. Yeah, there's a lot of little things I should have said yes to that could have, worked out just fine. And so just looking back and seeing like some of the things I have said yes to, it's like, man, it doesn't feel like I'm helping myself, because I'll say yes to the wrong things, even though they seemed right at the time, and I'll miss out on some things in hindsight that I'll look back on. It's like, I should have given that a chance,
Right.
Well, you can see how then attachment is why there's so many attachment types, just like at a whatever I don't know if it's the right word, but genetically or whatever, because that propagates the human population because there's so much more acceptance of so many possibilities of mates and partners and things like that, right?
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's
More
why
bodies.
that's why I was for a long time I was just Mr. Hookup and one night stand, because I knew that if I spent a significant amount of time getting to know this person, there was like a 99% chance that I would find them repulsive and I wouldn't be able to fuck them. So gotta get it done before we know anything about each other.
That's an
Well, it's
extreme
also the
method.
sexual instinct thing where it's like, that can override a lot of, oh shit, she's like actually fucking stupid, but the sex is amazing, so I'll stick it out just for as long as possible.
And being a body type,
Yeah.
wanting to do some body stuff.
So yeah, one night stands, like the dates, were disastrous for me on multiple fronts, just because I have personality that pisses people off, and I'm also extremely judgmental, and so going out on dates is like I'd have to go on so many dates to find someone that I could stand. For me to have any fun, I had to just like fucking wing it with strangers.
Yeah, I don't know why what we're talking about is blending into this, but in preparing to go to Egypt, I've been studying like I'm fucking cramming for an exam, and it's so cool to like I think I know something, and then it goes like so much deeper. But I was reviewing Beelzebub's Tales to his grandson Gurdjieff's like big tome, and it's about like I don't. Do you guys know what it's about?
I think I started to read it
roughly. Yeah, I know a little bit about it, but not much.
It's weird. It's like kind of in the style of a sci-fi in a certain way. Like before sci-fi was much of a thing, but it's Gurdjieff using the like Beelzebub, who's like a demon in Christian and Jewish mythology, as a higher being that has like participated in some kind of cosmic mistake, and there's mistakes all the way up, like even God's confused sometimes, and he's kind of like doing some repentance, and he's on this ship called Karnak, which is an Egyptian temple's name, and he's with his grandson. His grandson gets really fascinated by the three-brained beings on Earth, meaning the three-sensored beings on Earth. He has like 6 journeys to Earth, and where he talks about weird experiences, and it's like very metaphorical and very interesting. And anyway, he goes to Egypt. There's all this significance about the Sphinx and all this kind of stuff, and he talks about like super ancient ways that people did things. And I was reading this section about how important astrologers were in Egypt, which is like everything is astrology in Egypt, and how David, you're saying something about the replication of bodies. Gurdjieff says all this like crazy shit, but he was talking about how basically like astrologers were like really essential for bringing people together sexually, and how finding a mate through an astrological match was like crucial to like producing people or essences of a certain quality, and that like there's like a real intelligence in attraction, and a real intelligence in certain forces coming together, and that the like sort of quality on the earth of human beings has really suffered because of the ways that we've been reproducing without real matches, whether you call that like real attraction guiding it, or real social instinct guiding it, or a real sense of like what should go into a sexual match. And so this thing of like bodies reproducing and like the saying yes to everything, but like without the like discrimination of what to say yes to, without owning all the no, it creates this
a bunch of cattle, people as cattle.
Yeah, I mean, it creates a lot of low quality experience. And then you're trying to say yes to that low quality also, and versus us that's always trying to say no to it. And it's like it flattens everything. I read that there's like a baseline color to the universe. Like the average color of the universe is called cosmic latte.
What?
Yeah, look it up. It's terrible. It's so appropriate.
Is that what happens when people are just unconsciously making bad mating choices?
I think so. It's just like
it's just like a medium brown kind of.
Yeah, it's like
beige.
Latte even sounds like kind of nice because it's got this like milky like coffee thing, but it's like not even that good. It's just like tan beige.
Yeah,
like
Christian beige.
Christian beige. There it is. Rustic beige.
Cosmic latte. This has got to go on a t-shirt. I want to make a t-shirt that's cosmic latte.
All of you people are cosmic latte.
We're adding some new insults to the BHE vocabulary. You're no better than cosmic latte.
The most
your soul.
Color. in the universe.
Your soul
you know?
is Cosmic Latte.
And so,
Oh my
yeah,
gosh.
it's like, you made that metaphor of the crystal or the prism or something. Like,
Yeah.
a crystal or a prism is like a specified thing. It has to approach the affirmation. It has to approach the 9 has to the affirmation, the 9, yes, whatever, in everybody has to mix with the sharp distinctionness of the no.
And
And
that
then the color spectrum
differentiates the
shows up.
colors, and then you
Right.
can see the separate stripes of color.
Right.
Right. Yeah.
There's even that thing, it's like the slot, like it's like if you shine, what is it? It's if you shine a flashlight in a dark room, and you've got like a wall, and then between the wall and the flashlight is like a slit, or like what is the fucking word I'm trying? Like some kind of, you can have like a curtain or like something, an obstacle, but with like cuts, like little stripe cuts in it.
Mhm.
And so, like, let's say you have like 3 cuts, and you're shining the light through the 3 cuts, and you're looking at the impression it makes on the wall.
The other side. Yeah.
It'll create what's called an interference pattern, where instead of like 3 slots or something, or 4 slots, whatever that matches the cuts in the cardboard or whatever you got, it actually makes a whole bunch more. And it's this thing that it's like related to quantum physics or something, but it's this argument that like light behaves like a particle and a wave. And so it's this thing where the light it's like being split up, and yet it's still coming back and interacting with itself in a way that we don't quite understand. Like I'll just like try to look it up, and anybody can like fucking Google whatever this experiment is, but it's like you can just do it.
Yeah.
And so relate that back then to
like
Well-
what the 9 fragmenting thing is doing, maybe?
Yeah, well, it's like I think that in all of us, the 9 in all of us is afraid that everything's just going to fall apart or to fall into total entropy or nothingness. So I got to affirm it all to keep it all together. And that's like as a 9, like sticking my flag in the ground and being stubborn about it. Whereas the bottom of the Enneagram in all of us, the Harnell Ut, the gap, is saying no to it all and just like wants it all to die. And when those 2 forces are somehow brought into the right relationship, like in this like slot experiment, or I'm going to find the real name of it, it does create division, but it's a division that keeps coming back, and it is like that metaphor of the breath. It's like the 2 waves just keep coming back and making the spectrum.
Yeah. So this is going to be the part of
It always
real quick, I want to hear that, but it's called the double slit experiment. So like,
I
look it
know
up.
that one. Yeah. Well, where I was going is, I mean, you're kind of talking about, it's actually based in physics, but at the same time, you're kind of talking about magic.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? In some sense.
Mhm.
And it is almost magic when you think of it in the context of that most of us don't reach that kind of subtle, refined capacity to do that integration. You know what I mean? Of those forces. And then I'm actually relating it even back into what you were saying about using astrology to find a mate. Matching somebody's, 2 people's charts or whatever, and those 2 people happening to be, not that there's probably multiple people, right, that could ultimately work for you on Earth as far as a mate, an ideal mate. But being in the right place and being born at the right time, that's another kind of magic. You know what I mean? And I don't know where I'm going with it, but that's, to me, kind of an important piece. And I think it is, you touched on it being an aspect of kind of the sexual instinct and the social instinct. And I think there is a certain thing there. And part of, and I can, just as I'm saying this, I can loop it back into my whole conception of the instincts and the elements. So with sexual and social, that's fire, water, and air, and leaves out earth. And so you're kind of transcending earth when you're in that space. So that's the metaphor there, which is an interesting idea.
That's a good point to make, because at least when it comes to mate selection, if you're just looking at it from the perspective of just self-pres, it just becomes a meat market, which is
Right.
the best bodies, and it doesn't even matter
Yeah.
what's going on upstairs or if there's chemistry, who's got the biggest ass
Right.
and tits and who's got the biggest chest, shoulders, and dick and all that kind of stuff.
Yep.
Whereas social and sexual, with social, it's like, how are we aligned? Do we have similar values? How are we connecting? And that kind of thing. So that
Even
whole
gets
nother
into
layer.
like religion, cosmology, and
Exactly.
ideology. Yeah. Mhm.
It's like even I've had to learn even managing this group is that certain people just don't belong around certain people. Like if you have
Mhm.
largely different political views, you're just going to be arguing about politics all the time. And if you politics is an example of just life values, that can be a huge problem. And then, there's the sexual where it's just like this unpredictable chemistry spark that no one can put a box on. It's like it's either there or it's not. If you don't, just the self-press thing where it's just like, she's beautiful, she's hot, or this guy's tall and has
Right.
money, you can get into a lot of unsatisfying matches. Whereas, with social and sexual, it's like you can really find someone who aligns with you and also, sets you off and lights a fire that can keep things interesting. But it seems like a lot of, the general approach to mate selection is just generally self-pres, because that's kind of like what keeps that's like the baseline thing to keep mammals reproducing. It's just like, well, that's a big ass. Let me hop on that.
Right. And then to bring self-pres back in, there's then the high side of self-pres would be to recognize the body and the physical self as the temple of the
Mhm.
soul, right?
Yeah,
And so the place wherein magic and connection can happen,
Mm-hmm.
as opposed
Yeah,
to just focusing on just the survival, etc.
Mhm.
Yeah, I mean, that's a whole topic we could get into at some point. It's just, how do people select mates and partners? And everybody's going to have their biases depending on their instincts. And, like a lot of social types wanting to be with someone who aligns with them, or maybe a social type who wants to be with someone who grounds them. All the different motivations, and like how can you intentionally and consciously select a partner? One thing that I, just and over the last year and a half or so, realizing about myself, because this is something I've been obsessed about, is that there is a clear opposite. There is, for whatever you've got going on, whatever your type is, there is an oppositional energy. There is one clear type in the Enneagram that not only are you going to be attracted to, but that you're going to work well with, because there is complementary and oppositional energies there. And before, I used to think, oh, I like nines and I like sevens and I like threes, and it's probably going to be one of those types. And I recognize that whatever you've got going on, there's one clear type that's going to probably work best for you in a relationship. Maybe I'm speaking because I'm a pretty specific personality, and there's probably very little options for me in terms of what will work. But maybe I'm projecting my own sort of over specific perspective on things. But I do really believe that there is an ideal opposite or polarity for each person.
Something for sixes.
Yeah, it's like I didn't even see that coming, but it was always there. And I recognize that this is just like, it works, and it's always worked. I just didn't realize it in a romantic context. Some of my closest friends have been sixes, and like part of what works for me is just that I could be a extremely negative person. Beth calls me a dream killer, and I said, no, I'm a dream murderer. I'm a dream murderer.
Let's get this clear.
Yeah. So I mean, it's just like I'd have to be with someone who is comfortable with that level of negativity, and sixes tend to be pretty negative themselves, and so you tend to align with certain people that are complementary to whatever you've got going on. And so I think the more I look at this stuff, the more I'm like, you know what? If you're like a cosmic matchmaker, that you can really narrow things down, and if you can really see where people are at, you can really find out like, okay, this there is an ideal type for you if we're really getting down to it.
Yeah,
And for the
being-
listeners who, I don't know if we've mentioned it before, but there was a zone meeting where Emeka got dubbed something for sixes, and that's what we're referring to.
Yeah. And then the next
Yep.
zone, I got with the 6.
Yeah. Ding, ding, ding.
It was prophetic.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
John, yeah, I think at some point I recognized like John's supposed to be with a 9.
John needs a 9.
Yeah, and like you getting with
Let's get him
Alexander
one.
was like the least surprising. Well, it just felt like it felt like there is like a cosmic attraction.
Yeah,
There's a ideal person that exists, and you are on a collision course to meet that person. And so when you got together with Alexander, it was like, yep, that's exactly who he's supposed to be with, and not just a 9, a social 9.
Oh yeah, no, it's I can't, like, it's like every day I'm like, God, I can't believe I was with anybody but a 9.
Yeah,
Right.
And like yeah, like just everything about her is like completely juicy, and so it's just like ridiculous, like all the things, like all the you know, I mean, it annoys the shit out of me, but like all the green lights, you know, that I've been like little fragments of things. It's insane how much like there's some you know, like in Dark, right? Like the show Dark.
Yeah.
There's that theme of like, God, so Alexander and I have been watching it, and then we had like got like midway through season 3, and we were like, all right, we need just like a fucking break from this shit
Right.
for a second. But you know, the myth of Ariadne is like, you know, do you know that myth?
No, I
No.
don't know it.
I think it's like Perseus, one of the Greek heroes, is, you know, going through the labyrinth to get to the Minotaur.
Mm-hmm.
And like the way that he like finds his way out or in or something is that Ariadne is his girlfriend, and like spins this red thread that he can follow.
Mm-hmm.
And you know, like I think in the show, there's the like pendant of Saint Christopher that they keep passing through the show. Fuckers, just watch Dark. I know I'm spoiling, but like, or not really spoiling anything. But it's like, you know, it's got that red thread, and like
Yeah.
Marta, the main female character, plays Ariadne in the school play, and it's this whole thing of, you know, anyway, the two people meeting and going through all these labyrinths and all these like different faces and energies and times and dimensions and things like this, and finding like the one moment.
Mm-hmm.
And there's so much of life that just, you know, it just feels like this constant confusion, and like that show is just such a great job of that sense of the whole perspective or whole frame is like upended and you don't know what's going on, but at the end, like there's all these little clues that are leading to this one source. And I mean, who knows what's going to happen in the future, but like there's so many little threads that I wasn't quite giving the right attention to, or I was saying no to, or I was saying too much yes in this other way that I shouldn't have. But that was all like to find whatever experience I'm having with Alexander right now, and like who
Mhm.
knows what's going to happen, but it's like there's something really there. And so I don't know, it is funny like that you like I like, because I remember that was during a zone, that was during the peak time that we were like something for 6s for Emeka.
Yeah. It's like you had discovered 9 for the first time.
Yeah.
And I wasn't sure if it was like actually gonna work, but it felt like the quality of energy and attention, and it's specific also because it's, you know, I think some self-present eyes aren't necessarily gonna give you like, it's that instinctual
True.
lens isn't the same as social 9. So like something about social 9 was so specifically tapping into what you needed at that point in time. It's just like, holy shit, that's exactly the
Yeah.
kind of energy
Yeah.
that you need. And just even thinking about 4s in general, like Joseph, because he's currently single
Yeah.
and he's been, you know, out there, and he's thinking, oh, I should maybe try another type, but he's realizing it's got to be a 9. Like, what other type is going to put up with such a sharp and, you know, harsh personality like that? You know, what other type would that work with? But so the
Right.
more I learned about the Enneagram, the more I realized, like, I used to think, oh, I could, you know, you could date this type, or you could. No, like, if you really know yourself and really know what you've got going on, and you're being honest about what will actually work and what actually works in person as you try to make a relationship work, it's probably going to be one type. If you're being honest.
Yeah, no, I agree with that. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Yeah, because like it was like for the first time feeling like somebody was like interested in me.
Yeah.
Yeah. it's partly that acceptance thing. I mean, it's like a
Acceptance.
field of acceptance. You know what I
Mhm.
mean?
And it's not only just like what works, but it's a kind of relationship that can be, it's inherently transformative because that person is such a different creature and they force you to tap into parts of yourself that are dormant or that you need to tap into.
Right.
And they
True.
occupy, a sort of a blind spot, and you being in
Mhm.
relationship with them actually makes you more you in a weird way. Like that's what I've been kind of
Mm.
thinking about over the last year. It's like, oh, what is this thing with me and sixes? Like,
Mhm.
I find a lot of sixes annoying, but I'm in a relationship with one. I love it, and there's been some kind of weird alchemy between
Mhm.
my personality and six that just works. And I think that there is a type like that on the Enneagram for everyone. That that there is a type, that there is an alchemy, that something about that relationship is not only attractive, but it's also really challenging, and it's going to be transformative.
Yeah, in my past relationship, I'd always like sought a soulmate or something, and I never actually thought she was, like I kind of like wanted it to happen. Then I was like, oh no, it's just about like making something happen. But she like presented like all the shit that I received from my mom, of just like my mom's like constant bullshit, and double hexad parents, like basically it's like hexad parents like have kids and the kids are just like sort of there, like
Yeah,
it's like
right. That's another topic we need to get into:
yeah.
parenting for
Yeah.
hexad versus attachment, because that's a huge one. That's a big
Yeah,
one.
because like, yeah, my parents like did not give a shit about what was happening with me, and so then I like, of course, try to resolve that in a relationship with somebody who doesn't give a shit about me, and then
Mhm.
and then when I realized like, oh, I don't need to work this shit out that way,
Yeah.
like I don't need that, and then like here's somebody who's like it's so weird, like I mean everything from Alexandra's body type to like her hair to like all this different stuff is like just physical, all the attraction stuff, like it's all stuff I've always wanted, and like it's just funny. It's like, what was I doing? It was the whole thing of it was the wrong yes,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Mm.
Well, I mean, I like to think, even looking at my past partners, I do think that they do have certain qualities. Like, you wouldn't have been attracted to them unless they had some of the qualities that you need. It's just not the right one. Like, I can look back on my exes, and I've done this, and I've asked people to do this because I think it's an interesting exercise, but just take all your exes and take their photos and put them on like a collage or something. And one thing I find interesting is that there is some overlap to some degree, either through personality or appearance or both, where it's like these people seem like they're part of the same family because I'm the common link between all of them. So there are certain qualities or certain face types or whatever, certain personality traits that you're always looking for. But that's one thing I've recognized looking back on some of these exes is I was into him for a reason. It wasn't it wasn't a bullseye, but there was certain things, certain through lines that eventually making my way to Beth. It's like it all came together in one person.
Mm-hmm.
There also might be a thing where with body types, well, it's just much more critical to be getting what you want as far as that physical, style that works for you or whatever. I don't know if that makes sense. The physical
Yeah, well,
attributes.
it's not just the physical, but it's also like there's certain personality traits that have to be there in order for me to be like
Yeah.
really into it. Even just as simple as the way someone smiles. Like a smile is
Sure.
different types of smiles, and I'm only into one type of smile. It's
Mm.
like so it's like
Yeah.
if she doesn't have, like, it's weird, but if you look
Mm.
at the way all my exes smile, there's a fucking similarity in there's different
Oh,
smile
that's
styles. Yeah, so it's like shit like that. It's like, that's weird. I have
Mhm.
there's a specific smile that I like.
Yeah, that's interesting.
And it's not like you're not making conscious choices, but it's like these are
Sure.
certain things that hook you about somebody, and if it's not there, I mean, it has nothing to do with looks either. I've had partners that I thought were good looking, but they didn't have a certain whatever.
Yeah.
That really gets me going. So,
Cool.
so what the fuck did we talk about today?
I think there's some good stuff in there. Might be.
Oh yeah, we got to do an
45
intro.
minute.
Let's see if we can summarize everything we said today. And
Oh my god. All right.
Let's see. We talked about 9 stuff. We talked about and mates. Shit.
We went a wide span. We did some
I mean, people are
instincts
going to enjoy it. It's just sort of like
Yeah.
slapping a name on it and trying
Yeah.
to figure out what did we just talk about? Maybe
Go
you
ahead.
could just call it a freestyle freestyle podcast.
Yeah, I mean, a freestyle about like, kind of talking about the three forces,
Yeah,
like
there you go.
affirmation and negation and what keeps them together, and how like every type we didn't go to all the types, but we went to the polarities of the top and the bottom of the Enneagram that represent,
That's a good angle. Yeah, I guess it's recognizing the polarities that exist for all of us and how that could tie into mating choices and
Well,
yeah.
one way to say it is polarities, and then the relationship is the third force.
yes, right,
That's good.
yeah, the law of three, and like the Enneagram is just the law of three, just
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's just this. I mean, so dumb, but like fractal, just
yes,
in the drug trip or whatever last night. Like, I mean, I was like beholding the Ennead of Heliopolis, like the cosmic family that was the Enneagram. Like it was like on the ideal world or something. You know what I mean? It was like I could see it and feel it, and it was so real. So yeah, everything. I don't know. Law of three, something.
Yeah. I guess you could also say, because I was thinking about this the other day, how these relationships, like the way we're talking about the law of three, creates a third force, meaning the relationship. So Beth with me brings out certain qualities in me, and I bring out certain qualities in her, and us together is a third force. And then you and Alexandra, creates its own sort of third force where you guys together, it's like doubling down on that introvert thing. So like when we met up together and me and Beth are, all over the place, dancing everywhere, and y'all are just like in your own little mini zone and on the couch, So it's interesting how different relationships bring out different third forces.
that's true. Yeah.
And
totally
so
different. Yeah, in the integration is a totally different thing.
yeah, and so I do. That's part of the reason why I do think that there is, not to say it's going to be the same for every person who's the same type, but there is a polarity that brings about your ideal third force, that the relationship, creates something in you that you need. And so I know, David, you posted in some thread that you open to being with a 3, 6, 7, 9, or whatever else.
Yeah.
And it's like, yeah, I mean, for fun, there's a lot more options if you're just trying to have fun. But in terms of like a relationship, there's probably only one or two.
Yeah, I think there's probably a couple. For some reason I'm leaning towards 3, oddly enough, lately.
Yeah.
And
I can see that.
And that could even be, something about my whatever life trajectory thing of needing to move towards that energy. In some way. Yeah.
Yeah, you've had a thing with, 8.
8 is another one.
3 seems to have a strong effect on you. I think it's like the type that really just it's gonna have a transformational effect just being around that type. Even, and I had to wake up to the fact that was 6 for me. Like I didn't see it coming for 6. I just didn't expect it, but it was always there. It was always there.
Yeah, I mean, I'm basically arguing with 9s all day online, and it's not a 4-9 thing. It's like, of course, it's a 9.
Yeah, because I mean, I argued with 9s, and at some point I said, I'm done.
I'm gonna go over here and argue with some 6s.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
I can argue with the 6 all day.
Yeah.
But 9's like, I can't do it, man.
No, that's true. I mean, it is a thing. I'd say the same thing, really. It's just 9s are the worst. They're actually the worst. And 6s you can actually have a conversation with, and they're looking for truth. And there's a way in which 9s are almost not looking for truth.
Yeah. At least sometimes with 6s, they can have a fuck ton of questions, but you can fight with a 6. You can argue.
Yes.
And they're a mental type, and you can sort of play mental jujitsu or chess with them and catch them. But it doesn't matter if you do that with a 9, because that doesn't fucking matter.
You're hitting a solid force more with a 6,
Right.
And with 9, when your hand just passes through, it's like, what did I just do? What just happened?
It's like, yeah, thanks for your thoughts. I'm gonna keep thinking whatever the fuck I was thinking anyway.
Yes.
Yeah, great point. But back to what the fuck I was doing.
Yeah. Yeah, it's funny.
So yeah.
All right. Well, I gotta go.
All right, guys. So you're gonna be gone for 3 weeks?
Yeah, till like the 21st.
Okay.
If y'all want to recruit a certain little 9, hit her up.
Oh yeah, that's a good
Yeah.
idea.
It's a good idea. Yeah, we'll
Bring some
come up with
social
stuff.
social juice.
All right, man.
All right.
Good deal.
I'll miss you guys, and I'll see you when I get back.
Have a good
See you
trip.
later. Yeah, have fun.
Bye.
Bye.
Okay. Bye.
Only let myself fish in if I had